Guys, this is Greg Jones or 0779 for dragthebar.com, and today I'm going to bring you the fourth video in the Tools for the Trade series entitled the Shovinator, aka PBJ Automation. So this video is going to basically teach you how to develop a tool that I've created using Microsoft Excel, which allows you to take a large amount of PBJ data and automate it so that with a few clicks of the button you can find a whole bunch of really useful ranges for while you're playing in-game. Alright, so let's take a look at the Shovinator. You can see here, basically, we've got this automated PBJ chart. It's got our effective stack by big blinds and our position, and then you can see that when we go ahead and change these settings, it'll give us our ranges for shoving and our ranges for calling the big blind, calling in the big blind versus a bad player and a good player when they're shoving from this position. So you can see that everything is basically changing on the fly. It's a really compact and easy way to implement having all your PBJ ranges at your disposal. So I'm guessing you probably want to learn how to build something like this, and so that's what we're going to show you. Alright, so the whole way that this piece of software is built is based on this idea of a VLOOKUP table, which you can find at this YouTube. You can find a video on this YouTube site that describes how that equation works. Because I'm not a Excel expert in programming, I have taken the equation that they've given you on that video and basically figured out how to get it into this to work, but I really can't tell you exactly what everything in it does. I can show you the appropriate variables that are going to need to be changed to make it work. So first step is we're going to build our sort of header for this table, and then we're going to copy in our PBJ material. So you can see here we're putting in our PBJ shoving, our calling ranges versus a bad player, and our calling ranges versus a good player. These come directly from the Crushing Online Sit and Go's ebook. And then you can see that what I've done against a bad player is I've actually made the 8 and 6.5 blind ranges the same, because normally we would be calling around 7.5 blinds with these ranges. So just keep using these for either of those two. And then there's a couple things about the formatting here that are important. One, you need to make sure that all your data labels are the same. So under the gun has to be the same, written the same way in all of these. Your blind levels have to be written the same way in all of these, and you need to make sure that it's an actual text string, 10 BB, not just the number 10, or we'll have some problems later on. And then once this is all copied in here, then we can go ahead and start building this tool. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create some variables, and those variables are going to basically help us to look up through this entire chart and find the right information that's going to go into this tool. So let me pause the video for a second. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. I'm just going to clean up the area a little bit and get this thing looking a little bit better. So basically I've just put in the header here, and now I'm going to copy all these. I'm going to take all these cells, I'm just going to fill them in white, and oops, that's the no fill. And we're going to basically use this as the area for where we're going to build this Shovinator chart. I'm going to outline that in a big black line. So I don't know how advanced you guys are with Excel, so I'm just going to show you some of these actions as we do them. Now, there's an important tab that you're going to need to have in Excel, which is this Developer tab, and it doesn't come preloaded onto Excel. It's in there, it's just you need to find it. The way you find that is you go to Excel Options, and then you go down to the bottom, and you see this Show Developer tab in Ribbon under Popular. It's the first thing. This will come unselected, so just make sure you select that. And then this Developer ribbon will be in there. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to insert some buttons. So we want to make sure we've got room for that. Just bring the cells a little bit wider until we're ready to go. And the way you go to this Insert Tools, and then this little Option button control at the top, this is the macro form. We don't need the ActiveX form. I don't even know how to program the ActiveX form. We're going to put in this button, and we're going to call that 10 BB. Shrink it down a little bit. And then we're going to right click on this and we're going to go to Format Control and we're going to say Cell Link J1. So that's going to take this cell J1 and it's going to assign it a value when we click this. So if we click that, now see over here J1 has a 1 in it. And then what we want to do is we want to make a bunch of these. Keep them in order, because every time you click one of these, the cell is going to change to a different value. So we'll make this 8 BB. Oops. 6.5 BB. So I'm right clicking on these to activate them, and then I left click to get the text 5 BB. And then what you'll see is that when you click on these, it'll format J1 from 1 to 4. So the next thing we need to do is get these in place. I'm just going to move them over with my arrows, make them not lined up nicely. All right. And then we need to put a text box around those, which is basically going to lock all these controls so that they're only active with each other. Now that's kind of a weird thing, but basically the problem is that if you have multiple buttons here, we want to make sure all the buttons aren't linked together. So you see that we didn't have to do anything to link these buttons, and so we want to make sure they don't link to a different set of buttons, which is going to be the position buttons. So let me get these all, and you want to make sure that these all sit inside this group box. We'll call this group box effective stack. And then a little pro tip here is going to be to put a space in front of and behind the letters, because when you zoom this thing in and out, you're going to find that that actually gets eaten up by this little black line if you don't. Alright, I'm going to pause the video for 1 second and then we will get on to the position area. Alright, so let's go ahead and drop these other buttons in. Now we're going to need 5 of these buttons. We're going to call these under the gun, 7-handed. And we're going to link this to K1. So now when we put the box around this one, they're not all going to force, because basically what happens is they all self-organize so that they link to the same cell, and even if you change the cell, it changes the same cell to all the other ones. So this is going to allow us to have these linked to 2 different cells. You'll see when we click it that now we've got 2 variables in the J and K cells. And let's go ahead and copy this. We're going to need 5 positions because we're going to be looking at under the gun, hijack, cutoff, small blind. Alright, now let's rename these. Hijack, cutoff. It doesn't really matter what you name these, so you can make them something that you're more comfortable with if you're not comfortable with the abbreviations, but you do need to make sure that they're compact enough that they can sit in this box that we're going to draw around them. Alright, so now you can see that we have those 5 buttons, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw a text box around those. we'll call our group box, and we'll call that position. And eventually we can line these up so they look nice and pretty. And then let's think about the same sort of the things that we're going to want to see in here. We're going to want to see shove, and then we're going to want to see a call versus bad. This is going to be call versus bad PLR. Call versus good player. And then range, percent call, fill in percent. Call this calling range. All right, and then we can draw some nice little lines around these. And this is going to be our PBJ. So, all right, so now we need to figure out how to get these numbers to look like these variables that we want it to search for. So you can see that here we've got 10 BB. So we need it to actually go down here and look for 10 BB in the chart. And what this is going to do is it's going to compare these two things on the chart. It's going to look for every spot where it sees under the gun, or in this case, let's say it's set to under the gun and 10 BB. It's going to go through this whole chart where we're going to set from 13 to 37, and it's going to look for the one instance where the under the gun and the 10 blinds are there, and that's going to pull these ranges. And it's going to display them here. So we need to have something that's going to translate these numbers into text. So we're going to use this formula, an if formula. And when you go and you put the if formula up, you can see here that it gives you the values that it expects to see in the formula. So the logical test is we're going to say if J1 equals 1. So that's just saying if this cell is equal to 1, comma. Then we're going to say quotation mark 10 BB, end quotations. So that's going to say if the cell is equal to 1, then the cell that we're typing this equation into now should read 10 BB. And then else, let's say not NA for now. All right, so you can see that it's 1, and then anything else we put it to. Oh, I didn't put quotes around the NA. That's why it's displaying an error. So anything else would be NA. Now, this gets a little tricky because we're going to need to have 4 of these, so we're going to have to embed some ifs here. Instead of using this, we'll basically say else if, and then we're going to start another version of this equation. J1 equals 2, comma, 8 BB. All right, so now we've got 2 values in there. And then if J1 equals 3, comma, 6.5 BB, and then comma if J1 equals 4, comma, 5 BB. So now we've got it basically saying if J1 is equal to 1, then 10 BB else, the next thing is in this else, it's going to do a whole nother if statement embedded. And it's going to keep embedding if statements down to 5 BB, and then we're going to close the parentheses, and you'll see that they're color-coded, so eventually when we see the outside parentheses is black, it matches the outside parentheses on the left side, so we know we've got enough parentheses, and we should be set to go. So now, you'll see that any of these are displayed as the right thing. We've got to do the same thing for this column. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just drag this over. And what that's going to do is it's going to change all these J1s to K1s. And then we just need to go in and change the text. And we're going to say UTG. Go ahead and pause the video if you're actually working on this in the background, just so you can keep up. HJ, HJK, CO, BTN, and then we actually need another one of these because we have 5 statements here. If K1 equals 5, SB, and then end parentheses, and we should be good. So now we can see that all of the positions are displayed correctly when we change the button. Alright, so now we've got this crazy equation we've got to get in here. And basically that equation is going to go into all these boxes, and it's going to display the VLOOKUP results. It's a pretty hard one. I honestly can't exactly program this equation myself, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab the equation from a sheet where I've already made this up. I'm going to pause the video, and then we're going to take a look at some of the pieces of the equation. Alright, so I've put the equation in here. It's got this crazy looking complicated equation, but you'll see that things get a little more simple when we start to click on it. So basically you're telling it to look up 2 variables. This is what VLOOKUP means. It's a 2 variable lookup table. And it's going to start by saying, what's the lookup value? So that's J2. It's basically just saying, what's the first variable we want to look at? And in this case, let's set it to under the gun 7-handed 10BB. So it's going to say, okay, well 10BB, I want to find that in this chart down here. So where is the chart? It's going to say, okay, A13 is where the chart starts. And then we're going to say match K2, which is the under the gun, to the 10BB in this range, A14 to A37. Alright, so it's going to look through this entire thing, A14 to A37, and it's going to look for where under the gun and 10BB match. And then at the point where it does that, it's going to need to output it, and these 2 numbers tell you how far it's going to offset to the right, the output. So we change both of these to 2. And what you'll see here is that this range, which we have down in the sheet, 9s, ace, king, ace, queen suited, is now displayed here. So what we want to do is take the same equation and copy it. You want to go into the equation and copy the text, not drag it this time. And we're going to put it into the spot next to it. And then the only thing we have to do is change this to 3 and 3. And now it's going to output the shoving percent. So now it's offsetting, instead of 2 to the right, which is 1, 2, it's going to offset 3 to the right, and it's going to give us this value. So this is telling us our shoving range. And if we had our villain calling range for big blind in here, we could put that there. So let's copy that in again. And let's change these to 4s. And now we've got our villain calling range in there. So we've got big blind is equal to 13, small blind is equal to 10, the rest of the model is equal to average. Alright. And then what we want to do is we want to get this in for the other two calling range tables. So I'm going to copy this text again. But this time now the range has changed. So we need to start looking a bit lower down. We're going to start at A39, and we're going to look up from A40 to A63. So we're going to go to change this A13 to A39, and then we're going to change these 40 to 63. 40 to 63. Now you'll see that this range, calling 10 blinds from an under the gun shover when we're sitting in the big blind, is going to be displayed as ace, king, and jacks. And then let's just copy these a couple more times. So notice it's still looking up the same data and putting it in here until we change to go over and get the next column. And for some reason I must have put these in as percents. Oh. Sorry, I'm just going to back up a little bit here. 3, 3. This one needs to be 4, 4. And so let's make sure we've got 2 full. So we can see it's 3.0, not just 3. Otherwise it'll round for you. And let's go ahead and put up this last one. And now we need to find the ranges again for the calling good players, and that starts at 66, and it goes from 67 to 90. So 66 here, 67 to 90. '67, 90. And now it's got our calling versus bad players. So we know that we're calling pretty tightly against an under-the-gun shove. Pocket queens. But if we wanted to see how all this changes, we can just change the buttons. And then we want to copy this over one more time. And here, 4, 4. And we're done. So a couple more things that you may want to do to tweak this a little bit. You can see now that everything should be working and all the ranges are changing simultaneously based on one button click. So one thing you'll notice is we've got an issue with a little bit with spacing. We want to make sure we can see the full range, and most of these calling ranges are going to be shorter than the shoving ranges. So let's grab sort of a long calling range. And once we've got all the calling ranges in there displayed, then what we're going to do is we're going to just wrap the text on this, and that's going to bring this down. And you'll find now that that's 2 lines, but you can see the whole thing. We want to kind of keep this compact because we want to be able to keep it up on our screen while we're playing, but we don't want it to take too much screen space. So you can move these buttons around so that they're kind of formatted really nice and evenly. Unfortunately, that wrap text moved things around a little bit. Again, make sure everything stays in the boxes that we built for them, the group boxes. So that's basically it. So now you know how to build this. I'm very likely to be able to get this up and hosted for Drag the Bar to be able to download. Again, the ranges come from my ebook Crushing Online Sit and Goes. But just in case there's a problem with the download or anything, you can go ahead and just rebuild this on your own. And also you'll know how to change it so that if you need to add more ranges or you want to make it for a different type of tournament, you can do that as well. So one thing I would recommend is that you go ahead and take a look at this, because one thing that's really nice with PBJ is to have the ranges that are both tighter and looser than the actual range you're choosing, so you can do your adjustment on the fly. So you could put, shove, shove loose, shove tight, and then you could put the 3 ranges that you would want to adjust between here instead of just one shoving range. And the way you would do that is you need to still link it to these buttons, and the problem is you're going to have trouble because you've got your variables already set up. So I would go ahead and I would make a second and third set of variables for that. Okay, so we'll call this like tight and loose. And then here you can say this cell, so tight is going to be 1 less, -1. And then this cell is going to be equal to this cell +1. And then you can link these. You can just copy these directly. And then we want to say if J3, 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 and then you're going to need a separate statement in here that says else if J else out of range. Okay, so right now you can see that this one is out of range. There's no 12 blind range here, but it would give you 10 blinds if you got 8 blinds selected, 6, 5. And then your loose range, you're going to need an out of range too. And then what you can do is when you put these equations back in for your loose and tight, you just reference this variable. So here, instead of referencing J2, you'd reference J5, and that would be your tight range. And you can go ahead and have all of these just selecting from these single buttons. So there's lots of ways to customize this. That's sort of why I wanted you to see how it's built in reality, not just copy it, off a website and start using it, because you may find that you can do a lot more with this. For example, you could put your heads up ranges in here too, where you would just have mostly, your small blind and shoving and calling ranges. You can have some bubble ranges that you might use where things are a little bit tighter or looser depending on the bubble action. There's all sorts of different ways that you can customize a sheet like this. And the real value of this is that PBJ, once the PBJ strategy gets really big, once you start to have lots and lots of sheets of information, it starts to be hard to efficiently shuffle through those. And so ABCS&G was designed to be a complete system that's also compact. But the problem is as you add more detail into your system, you may find it very hard to keep it compact. And that way, if you have like pages and pages and pages of data down here below, you can reference all of it really fast just by using this lookup table. So I've just started using this while I'm playing. I don't think there should be any problems using it while you're playing because it's not a real-time ICM function, and it's also not automated. You are having to actually look at the situation at the table, make a decision based on what you're seeing. So there should be no issues with this violating terms and conditions of the poker sites. And I can tell you that it really is a very effective way to quickly start making decisions in a sit and go based on using PBJ for shoving and calling. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned a lot from it. I hope you can get this tool and start using it in your games. And this is Greg Jones or 079 signing off.